Hello, this is Pastor James Hargrave. Welcome back to Greatest Love Ministries. Today we're going to talk a little bit again about the futility of trying to keep the law. We're going to look at James 2 verse 10, which says, "For whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles at just one point is guilty of breaking all of it. For he who said you shall not commit adultery also said you shall not murder. If you do not commit adultery but you do murder, you have become a lawbreaker." You have to be very, very careful with the law of God. The law of God has one purpose, and one purpose only. It is to show us our sin and our hopelessness. It is to show us our condition of being born in sin, singular, a dead heart, a dead mind, dead in trespasses, and sins, plural, sin, singular. Out of that dead nature, we sin. We do behaviors that are unloving. They're not life. They're destructive. And that just comes naturally to human beings. God never intended, when he gave, this is going to be a shock to some of you. God never intended, when he gave his law, the law of Moses, the Mosaic law, the Ten Commandments, he never intended that we would keep it or could keep it. He knew the hearts of men. He knew that we were in a fallen condition. He knew we could never keep it. He wasn't expecting us to keep it. The remedy was to only come in his Son, Jesus Christ, when he came to redeem the whole world through his body and blood on the cross and his resurrection. That's the remedy. The law is not a friend of a sinner, the law of God. And people use it in a very, very dangerous way. As James is pointing out here, the point he's making is we're all lawbreakers of the whole law of God. We're guilty of breaking all of it. And we do it on a regular basis. You know, if you justify yourself by the law of God, you're condemning yourself. Do not appeal to the law of God in reference to your status before God. He will find you guilty. There is no hope in the law of God, the morality of God, in the commandments. There is no hope in that. There's only condemnation. Nothing good comes out of trying to keep the law because we can't do it. The law needs to do its work to bring us to the end of ourselves and the futility of our self-help. We can't help ourselves, our sinful condition. Only Jesus can and did on the cross and the resurrection and ascension 2,000 some years ago. He's the solution. He's the remedy. And when we rest in him by faith, his Spirit works out holiness and righteousness of life. But the beauty of it is it's real. It's not just following a bunch of rules mechanically and robotically. It comes from our heart. Because by resting in the atonement of Jesus Christ and his redemption, he gives us and works in us a new heart, a heart of love, a heart like his, a heart that wants to please God, and a heart that's good, a good tree with good fruit. We bear fruit not because we have to or commanded to. It's because it's our nature now. We have come from death into life, and we live Good works are nothing but living life. And it's all a gift of God. Do not use the law. Do not hold it up to your neighbor and say, neighbor, you're sinning, because you're condemning yourself as a lawbreaker. If your neighbors, if you use the law, it will condemn you. Because no matter what you're holding it up to and say, I passed myself of the test, this was the righteous act I did. Do you really know the depth of your heart? There was no selfish motive in what you did. It was just out of pure love and obedience to God's righteousness. There's no selfish motive. There's no short-sightedness. There's no blindness. It was just a totally pure act. You're excusing yourself. You're excusing your sin if you think the law can excuse you. If you think the law gives you a pass and say, oh, this guy's doing everything right, you're deceiving yourself. The law condemns. Every time it's appealed to, it's condemning. And that's fine, as long as you realize who the solution is. The solution is Jesus Christ, the Son of God, Son of Man, and His atonement, His resurrection, His ascension, His power, glory, and honor. That is the solution. But most Christians have never taken to heart the futility of trying to keep the law does. And it even creates more sin. Trying to keep the law creates even more sin and frustration and anger. The law brings wrath. So when you quit, when you cease and desist trying to keep it and cast yourself on Jesus, He will fulfill that in you. He already has 2,000 years ago. And He's going to make that real in your life. That righteousness, that holiness that He promises is a promise, and He will work that into your life if you get out of the way. How do you get out of the way? You give up on your hopes in the law. There is no hope in the law. The law brings hopelessness and despair. The law doesn't bring good things to you. It destroys. It condemns. The only one who ever brought good to humanity is Jesus Christ. And by extension, Moses, the lawgiver, who points out the futility of trying to keep the law and our utter sinfulness, and points to the Savior through the prophets. You don't need to use the law. The law does not generate life. Only the living Son of God, the living law, generates life. When you eat His body and drink His blood, poured out unto the remission of sins, eaten for the remission of sins, shed for the remission of sins, He works that faith in your heart that says, thank you, and I love you, and I love myself, and I love my neighbor. There's no more basis for condemnation, but when you pull out the law, you're killing it all. You're killing the Spirit. You're killing Jesus. It's not a combination of fact. It's not Jesus and the law. It's all Jesus. It's all faith. The law profits nothing but condemnation. Now, if you don't think you're a sinner, then you need to take a deep look at the law, because the law condemns you as a sinner. And if you're honest, you'll say it condemns you also. Don't excuse yourself from the condemnation of the law. It has its place. It has its purpose to condemn. But there's no life in it. Not for the fallen human being with a dead heart, dead soul, dead mind. There's no hope. It brings condemnation and death. The resurrection of Jesus Christ brings life. So let go of the hope of the law. There is no hope in the law. If you don't understand how it condemns you, you understand nothing about Christianity. Your own works condemn you. The works of Jesus Christ save you. His works alone. And as He expresses His resurrection life through you, that's what brings life. Jesus, the living law. And when He's living inside of you, He's writing and writing on your heart, your flesh, your mind, His will and intention. He's living out His resurrected life in you, writing His law in your heart. The only way to keep the law is by placing your faith in Jesus Christ. The only way to be righteous and holy is placing your faith in Jesus Christ, who gives that righteousness to you objectively through His death and resurrection 2,000 years ago. And He also works it into your life through a process over time, subjectively, brings righteousness and holiness into your life. And all that without the law. The law just tells you what not to do. It condemns. It gives no life. There's no life in the written law. It brings death, brings condemnation. Thank you.